This episode of That's What G Said podcast is brought to you by Full Service Realtor, Cindy Carava. Visit Cindy Carava for all of your real estate needs. On this episode of That's What G Said, we're going to have an interview with Scott Shapiro from Twin Spires and Bet America, where we break down all of the NFL Week 5 games. We'll go through the lines and we'll give you our best plays. And then we'll get into some Saturday horse racing, touch on a couple races from Belmont and a couple races from Keeneland. Hope you enjoy and are able to make this a profitable podcast off of the weekend plays. Best of luck. Thank you, Joey. Hello, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast, October the 4th here, 2019, talking sports, pop culture. This will be a mainly sports show. We'll get into some TV show recaps and more of the pop culture stuff next week. We start talking a little bit about the month of October and Halloween, but this will be an NFL heavy and a little bit of horse racing. Before we jump into the interview with Scott Shapiro and the selections, have to go back in time a little bit because Thursday kicked off the MLB playoffs. So first we'll recap those two games. And we had a really good Cardinals-Braves game where the Cardinals scored 4 runs in the top of the 9th in order to beat the Braves 4-3. Braves come right back and score 3 in the bottom of the 9th. But what we've seen now in the 2 National League games, because we saw the Cardinals, Braves, and then we saw the Dodgers, Nationals, the bullpens, right? As soon as the Dodgers were able to get Corbin out of the game, you get the Nationals bullpen in, you're able to get Fernando Rodney and a couple runs off Rodney. And that was the case here with Melanson, who gives up 4. Luke Jackson gave up a couple runs also. Carlos Martinez gave up a couple runs for the Cardinals on their side. So the bullpens, the weaknesses, this was a huge win for St. Louis. Because now, if you're a Cardinal fan, you're up 1-0. You stole a game on the road. And the game on the road that you stole was the game where your best pitcher was not pitching. So now, if you're a Cardinals fan, if you're a Cardinal bettor, you have Flaherty, who has been the best pitcher in baseball through the second half, and the Braves are going to have to beat Flaherty most likely 2 times in order if they want to win this series. The Cardinals are set up beautifully in this series now with that steal of Game 1. Loved what we saw from the Dodgers, workmanlike, not a lot of mistakes, great at bats, didn't chase a lot of bad pitches, got on when they needed to, took the walks, and they were able to work the count, get Corbin out early. Just smart baseball. Smart baseball from the Dodgers. The game I'm not going to be able to get over for a little while is that Rams game from last night. That one stings a little bit. A little bit of a bad taste in the mouth on the Rams one. So the Rams end up losing 30-29. If you listen to the preview, Thursday night preview, this was going to be one of our plays of the week. NFL plays. The Rams actually were a 1.5-point underdog. And so I ended up playing this game on the money line plus 110. The Rams end up losing by 1, which means they covered the spread, but we lost our bet because we didn't bet them plus 1.5. We played them plus 110. This is one that I'm just going to keep shaking my head on for a while. 3 times early in the game, the Rams were inside the 20. Right off the bat, first drive, Seattle fumbles. The Rams get the ball. They're at the Seattle 30. Can't move the ball at all. They have to kick a field goal. So instead of getting a 7, they have to get a 3. Next drive, Rams get the ball. They're at the Seattle 14. can't punch it in, another field goal. Twice you're inside the 20, twice you kick field goals right off the bat. Later in the half, down 14-6, the Rams get into the red zone again at the 20. Todd Gurley fumble. 3 times in the 25, you get 6 points, 2 field goals and a fumble. And even with all of that, at the end of the half, you're only down 1. Then in the second half, some absurd things happen. There's an incredible catch from Tyler Lockett, from Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett. The most, by Next Gen Stats, this was graded the most improbable completion since 2017. Russell Wilson scrambled 24.6 yards, traveled 13.62 miles per hour at the moment of the pass. The pass traveled 39.2 yards in the air. Tyler Lockett was 0.2 yards from the sideline, 1.1 yards from the back of the end zone, 0.9 yards from Eric Weddle at the moment the pass arrived. Pass was the most improbable completion of the last 2 seasons and the second most improbable in the Next Gen Stats era. So that's a touchdown that beats me. And then, how about this sick stat? Even after all of that, even after Seattle's got the ball, they have to score a touchdown to take the lead, they get a gift personal foul. It should have been 2nd and 10. Instead, it's first down, and it gives them a 15-yard penalty, moves them 15 yards closer, and it helps their drive. Horrible officiating. So after the bad drives where they can't score, the most improbable catch in years, a terrible penalty, it's 4th and 5. Seattle scores a touchdown after a bad play by the Rams DB. Rams get the ball. They still have the chance to go ahead. They're moving the ball. And we get Greg Zuerlein, Greg the Leg, set up for a 44-yard field goal. That's all we need to win. Even after all of this, Greg Zuerlein, 112 of 115 on kicks of 44 yards or shorter. And he misses. I guess sometimes as a gambler, we're just supposed to lose, right? I watched this game, this Rams game. 6 things needed to go wrong in order for them to lose by 1 point. That is crazy. I have a disgusting throw-up taste in my mouth. Vomit. Puke. Gross. As you can tell, I'm obviously over that one. Nonetheless, let's get on to our interview with good buddy Scott Shapiro from Twin Spires and Bet America. We tackled all of the Week 5 NFL games. We'll give you some of our best bets, some of the plays that we like, which ways we're leaning, which games to stay away from. Hope you enjoy the interview with Scott Shapiro.
Very happy to have a good friend, Scott Shapiro, back on That's What G Said with us. I mean, it is an amazing time of the year, and we welcome in Scott, who you know from Bet America, from Twin Spires, and not only racing, he covers all sports. So for someone like us, Scott, because we like racing, quite a bit, this has to be the best time of the year with the big racing weekends on top of the football, on top of college football. We're getting, I'm a big basketball fan. I know you're a college basketball fan. NHL just started also. Baseball playoffs, for me, it's been great the last few years with the Dodgers. This has to be the best time of the year, right?
Well, when it comes, it's not close. Like you said, it feels like it shouldn't even be close. I guess there's a couple other times. March Madness.
Like March Madness, like April-ish too, yeah.
Yeah, Derby-ish, like March to Derby. But, I mean, for a couple of weeks here, it's intense. I mean, you got the win and you're in Breeders' Cup races at Keeneland, at Santa Anita. We had some big racing at Churchill. And then, of course, football and baseball playoffs, which brings a whole new thing into light. I don't watch that much baseball during the year, but now I'm forced to watch every pitch of every game, kind of. So, yeah, there's no doubt this is one of the best times, if not the best time of the year. And football and racing are my top 2 things other than maybe college hoops. So it's a great time, man. I'm really looking forward to things getting started tonight, Thursday Night Football, depending on when you listen to this, and really – having a great week and even a good Monday night game for a change. So
yeah, so we're recording this right before Thursday Night Football and right before the MLB playoffs. So depending on when you hear it, we'll have some. We probably won't talk much about the Thursday Night Football game, but when we talk about baseball a little bit, just some overall thoughts. You and I did a preview MLB futures podcast on your show, the Who Do You Like podcast, back in March before the baseball season even started. And now that the season is ended and we look back, we actually did pretty well. A couple of the futures that I played myself, I ended up hitting. I think the one that I'm particular that I was really high on that did well were the Twins. They ended up, I didn't think they were going to win 100 games and set the record for the most home runs hit ever, but they had a really strong season. And the Cardinals, and I think the World Series that I had predicted was Houston versus St. Louis, which still has a shot there. And you and I were pretty, I think some of the teams that we weren't high on too, like the Cubs, we didn't really love. I don't think we were super high on the Red Sox, like having as strong of a year as they did last year. And so we sniffed out baseball pretty well. What do you think about, the playoffs now in the next couple of weeks coming up?
Yeah, it was a really good year for us. I mean, the Orioles and Cubs unders were the last two routes I had, and the Cubs really hit the skids. We got the Diamondbacks over right. You crushed the Twins. I was a part of that. And now I'm sitting on the Cardinals to win the NL as my final wager.
Nice.
So hopefully, I think the price is certainly good. It's close to 8-1, so we'll hope that they can pull it off. In terms of the playoffs, I'll be honest, I haven't followed it as much. I did more preview work than I did during the year, but it just seems like the Astros are going to be really tough to beat with that pitching staff. No?
Yeah, they're loaded, and I'm trying to find weaknesses, and so you want to look into their bullpen to try to find them, but they have like Will Harris, who's over the last 5 years, like analytics wise, he has some incredible numbers. He's like one of the best relievers that you just don't hear of. Presley is really good, and then Osuna is good, and he's been there, and they're going to be able to move a starter or two like Wade Miley into the bullpen. And the difference for their team, versus the team they're going to be playing, the Astros, like the Rays are going to throw out, Morton is the only real starter they have right now.
Crazy,
and they're going to just throw out guys for 2 and 3 innings every game. And then you're going to have the Astros who are going to throw out Verlander and Cole trying to go complete games, and cranky. So it'll be total opposites there. And we'll see if the Yankees and Twins, I think that'll be a real fun series because those are the top 2 teams as far as home runs hit in baseball ever. They've hit the most home runs. So the ball should be flying out of the ballpark. And then I got to hope this year again for the Doyers.
I was going to ask you your thoughts.
It's it's been from like a fan perspective, it's been a really weird year because I've tried to make sure that all the Dodger fans I've seen just enjoy the process, right? I think after back-to-back years of making the World Series and then just not winning, fans got a little disappointed and they feel like the pressure. Even the fans feel the pressure this year, like we got to win. And I try to look back and like, hey, the Dodgers haven't really choked. They lost in the World Series to 2 really good baseball teams. They beat all the teams that they played in the National League the last couple of years. They had another amazing year, and you've seen what it takes out of the Red Sox having to go through it last year, and it's tough to put back-to-back years together. So I hope they get there again, and I hope they get a chance to play one of those good teams from the American League, and then I won't feel as disappointed. I obviously want to win, and I think they're loaded this year. I think this is the best team they've had the last 3 years. Does that mean they can't lose? No, because the one team I did not want to face the most is the team they're playing. Are
you worried about the bullpen?
Yes. The thing that I'm not quite as worried about is that the Dodgers bullpen that they have on this playoff roster really wasn't a lot of the bullpen throughout the year. They're going to have, guys like Dustin May throwing some innings there. Maeda is going to be in the bullpen a lot more, who helps them quite a bit. They said Rich Hill might start Game 4. He'll probably be in the bullpen at some point. You're going to have Stripling giving you some innings. Urias is maybe they're going to try to have him be like a Josh Hader light that can come in at multiple times and give you multiple innings anywhere you need. So I think they just have more options this year. I think overall, they're not going to have to lean on Kershaw to come back on short rest, with this team. They're not going to have to lean on Kenley trying to get you 2 innings or 2+ innings. So I think that's where it may help them, just having more options. So of course their bullpen's a weakness, but you know what, Scott? When I looked around, I think everyone this year, you have the Yankees who have a really strong bullpen, but nobody really has like dominant bullpens.
Somebody's going to step up, and that's who's going to win the World Series.
Exactly.
That's what happens always. I remember when the Phillies won the World Series. I don't think they give up a run in the bullpen the whole playoffs.
Boston last year.
Yeah, and so many guys on that Phillies team probably never had career years. I mean, Ryan Madsen, Brad Lidge were unhittable. So it just goes to show it's going to be about timing and management by the manager of the bullpen and not overthrowing guys and hoping it all works.
Yeah, Friday is actually a pretty underrated sports day when you get the 4 baseball games. It's kind of one of the only days when you get
Four real baseball games.
Yeah,
Yep.
like that are important and that matter, and it's kind of baseball has the stage throughout the day. There are very few days where baseball actually gets the stage. Even this year, I think the NBA is going to open the season on Game 1 of the World Series, which is just kind of bad for both of them. I wish they could have just split it up one night. Real quick, before we get into the NFL slate this week, your Wisconsin Badgers, they had a real trap kind of game last week as far as like against the spread, and they still were able to win the game. But that's what you have to do when you're a good team after they just beat the crap out of Michigan a few weeks ago. So, you have a couple big games left on the horizon. How do you feel as a Wisconsin fan? And I don't know if you've looked at the college slate, if you had any college thoughts before we get to the NFL.
Yeah, first off on the Wisconsin, there's flat spots, but there's playing like we did. I think that's a little different. I mean, we didn't play well at all. And the concerns that I had before the Michigan game really came to fruition. Mainly our quarterback play, Jack Cohn, who really is just a game manager and needs everything to go right. He made some good throws against Michigan, but mind you, I mean, the running game was going and Michigan just didn't show up. I'm a little concerned that game's going to be an outlier, both from Michigan and from us when the year's done. But I'm going to remain hopeful. We have somewhat of a bye this week against Kent State and then some tough games. We have Michigan State coming to town, and then we have the game that everybody's looking forward to at Ohio State. So I'm cautiously optimistic and just happy that we had put that game together on the big stage versus Michigan. In terms of the slate this week, I didn't have any real strong opinions, but one thing I just wanted to bring up is the idea there's a number of teams that could be caught with laying big numbers and look-ahead spots. Penn State on paper looks like they should demolish Purdue without their quarterback, and the line's 28.5. But Penn State has a gauntlet of a schedule coming up, and they just came off a dominating a road performance against Maryland. So I could easily seeing them coming out a little flat. I think they have. After this week they have at Iowa, Michigan, and at Michigan State the next 3 weeks. So before you lay the points there, I'd be a little bit careful. LSU has not really – they've played the out-of-conference game against Texas but hasn't really gotten into the SEC schedule. They've got Florida next week, so that's a huge game for them. They're laying 27.5 against Utah State. I would tread lightly there. And then the Red River Shootout is next week. With Oklahoma and Texas playing at the Cotton Bowl. And Oklahoma's laying 32 on the road against Les Miles in Kansas, while Texas is laying 10.5 on the road in Morgantown against West Virginia. So those are just maybe some tricky spots. Maybe you could play them all lightly and hope to go 3-1 on the dogs, but more so just to beware before you lay the big wood.
Yeah, coming off of a couple weeks for me, we had a real good start for the first few weeks, and then back-to-back weeks where it was on Maryland, which was great. Like when I lose a game,
at least
I don't mind.
Go to bed early, right?
Exactly. I don't mind.
For you.
I'd always rather lose that game than the way I lose the Virginia game.
I had Virginia as my only play of the week last
and so
week.
That's the one that leaves a sour taste in your mouth because there's a difference between being on the right side of a game or just being on the wrong side, and that was actually, I feel like we were on the right side of the game there. You get a couple bad defensive scores and you're on the road and it's like, then things change. And so, this week to me, there's a lot going on. There's baseball I'm sinking my teeth into. So I kind of did the same thing. I didn't love the slate a whole lot. I'm just going to kind of watch, refresh for college because I was a little off the last 2 weeks and then get back. It's been a good start to the season for me so far in NFL. And I know you had a nice week. I think you've had a couple nice weeks in a row now, right?
Yeah, it was. I was 500 after 2 weeks, and then on my selections on Bet America, and then the last 2 weeks I've gone 11-3 against the number, so sitting at 19-11. So
that's funny. We're almost the same, but kind of flipped. I started 3-3, and then went 6-1, 5-2, and 3-3 last week. So up to 17-9.
Nothing wrong with that, man. But I'm bracing myself for some bad luck or
Sure.
some bad picks. So, because in the NFL, as good as you are and as much work as you put in, there's still a lot of luck that needs to go right. Things go right. I mean, injuries, just a lot of things can happen. So, hopefully, being on your show this week will continue the good times.
Okay, we'll get into it. We'll start getting through the slate. So we won't really hit on the Thursday night game, but we will start. And we'll both get on the soapbox a little bit. I saw you tweet about this, and I was so frustrated when they did this a couple weeks ago because they were trying to spotlight the Rams-Saints game, and they're doing it this week again because they're trying to spotlight the Cowboys-Packers game, where there are 14 football games on Sunday 13 football games on Sunday, and we're going to get 10 of them in the morning window, including the London game. I mean, the only redeeming thing about the London game was that it was by itself and that it was on at a time when there was no other football on. So it was. I actually would like it out here on the West Coast because I'd get up at 6:15.
I love it on the West Coast.
It was great.
I think they did this last year though. I think they had one game at the normal time.
They did.
And then the other couple early in the morning. If I'm not mistaken.
Who the hell is going to watch the Raider-Bear game? You know what I mean? When you have 9 other games going, betting all your other fantasy. If that thing was on 2 hours earlier, we'd all get up and watch it.
Give me all the one-off games, man. I love being able to settle in. I mean, 2 or 3 is great too.
Sure.
But yeah, it's frustrating because then you're scrambling for 3 hours to keep up with everything.
And you can't really bet like the late games very well, or you can't for a lot of people that play off of how they do early. They can't double up. They can't catch up, really. It's hard when you only have a couple opportunities later on. So it's a little bit frustrating. We just wish they could spread it out a little bit more. That's all.
We love it so much. Give us more.
A little bit more that we can pay attention to. Okay, let's jump in to many of these early 10 o'clock games. So I guess the first one we'll hit on is the Ravens at the Steelers. Now, this game is around 3.5. I think it's Pittsburgh's the Ravens are favored going to Pittsburgh. We saw Baltimore last week get really beat up by Cleveland, and then Pittsburgh beat up the Bengals on Monday night. I like the side of the Ravens in here. I think they're better. I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to keep up scoring wise with the Ravens, but I don't know if I'm going to really make this a play or not. And I've seen some sharps that kind of like the Steelers in here at home. If you can get a 3.5, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, in terms of the side, I mean, the Ravens are a team that I'm not going to endorse right now as a road favorite because all they've really done was beat Arizona barely at home, and they beat up on Miami, and then they got crowned as the third best team in the AFC. And their defense is without key ingredients from last year. Yeah, I'm not real high on their defense. But I'm not sure if the Steelers on short rest are going to be ready to play back-to-back good games. I mean, Mason Rudolph, the Ravens, one thing they have is a good coaching staff. Yes, Wink Martindale maybe phased out as their defensive coordinator after the last couple games if he doesn't get things turned around. But I trust that they're going to at least know that Mason Rudolph does not throw the ball downfield, and they're going to put 8 guys in the box and make life difficult. So what I'm going to do in this game, and it is a play for me, is play under the total on Bet America. At least right now it's 44.5. Guys like Mason Rudolph are quarterbacks that are under lovers, under players, friends. Yep. They complete a lot of balls, but they're not big plays. They just keep the clock moving, just like the running game. I see the Steelers running the ball, throwing those short and intermediate passes, very few big plays. The only time they've had big plays in the last 2 games is completely blown coverage, which can happen. And then I see the Ravens defense playing a little better just based on pride. I mean, they were just dominated 2 weeks in a row.
Yes.
So, I think the Steelers D is a little better than we might have think. They've got a lot of talent on there. They've got a good pass rush. I'm a little worried about Hollywood Brown getting behind the defense once or twice and Lamar making plays with his legs. But in an interdivision game, these teams know each other well. I'm going to go under 44.5.
Yeah, I'll stay away from this one as far as a straight play. We kind of talked about the London game a little bit. Do you have any opinion in that Bears-Raiders game where the Raiders come off a surprising win? They looked really good. And what was impressive about that, too, is a lot of times you'll have a bad team get out early and then, the home team or the better team ends up coming back and they'll nail them late. And it looked like that was shaping up to happen where Indy had the ball, they had the opportunity, and then the first play on their drive, Oakland just gets a pick six and just puts it away right there. So they were able to make a big play on defense too. And then the Bears, whose defense is really good, we're going to be seeing Chase Daniel, who has been in the NFL now for 10 years. I mean, I think he started 4 or 5 games, but he's kind of always around and always been a backup, and he's made a whole ton of money. That's for sure. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Raiders were fortunate to play a Colts team without Darius Leonard, T.Y. Hilton, and Malik Hooker last week. Yeah, and the Colts came out flat for some reason. They did play well. They played too well for me to be willing to lay this many points with the Bears on the road. But with that defense, Khalil Mack fired up to play his old team. I just don't trust the Raiders enough to back them. So this is a stay away for me. Mm-hmm. It's always a little bit of a wild card when teams have to travel this far anyway. So, yeah, it's a stay away from me. Probably won't get to see or pay that much attention to this until Monday when I watch it on Game Pass, is the honest truth.
We have the Vikings going to play against the Giants, and the Giants are a 5-point underdog. Now, we talk about two teams who have completely different fan bases, like feelings on their quarterbacks right now. You have the Giants who are just loving Danny Dimes, and you have the Vikings whose fans are just hating Cousins and all the money that he's making, and he's apologizing on podcasts to his receivers about how he's not throwing them the ball enough. Diggs is sitting out of practice. He's disgruntled. Any thoughts on this game?
Well, I just feel like the Giants are going to be like a public underdog in this game, and those are always scary to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, because the Vikings are pretty much, the perception is as bad as ever right now after not being able to score on the Bears and this Cousins saga. And the Giants are coming in off 2 wins, but those 2 wins were against the Bucs, who are a good team. That was a good win, but that Redskin game was, I mean, they just couldn't lose that game.
No.
So I would be scared to back the Giants here. I don't have a play on this game. I'm not really excited about laying 5, but it kind of feels like a get-right spot for this passing game. If they open it up a little bit, the Giants' pass defense until last week with Dwayne Haskins was really picked apart through the first 3 weeks. And it just seems like if the Vikings were going to throw the ball to Adam Thielen, maybe if Steph Diggs plays, they'll throw it to him as well. And Dalvin Cook should have a good game. So gun to head Vikings, but this is a no play for me.
And the Giants are playing, Redskins team that does not have a strong receiving core either. I think McLaren was missing that game also. So they must, I think it looked a little bit better on paper. This is another one that I stay away from also, because it just seems like I would want to play Giants there at home plus the 5, but it just seems like I could see the Vikings win this game by 21, and I just would feel a little So Jets at the Eagles, and the Eagles are up to, I think, 13.5 on Bet America. I see an over-under of 44. And the Eagles had a nice get-right game last week. They took advantage of short fields a couple times. It's hard to know what you're going to get right now with the Jets because they've just been decimated by injury and all the stuff with Darnold. I've kind of stayed away from a lot of their games early on. They've just looked like a really bad team. It's going to be, for me, hard to get a gauge on who they are until I see them at least with Darnold for a few games. Any thoughts on this one?
No, yeah, it's especially now not knowing if Darnold's going to play. Mm-hmm. The Eagles banged up, but it's a stay away from me. Yep. If Darnold plays, I think this is too many points. I don't think the Eagles defense is good enough to lay 10 points, let alone 13.5. But just keep in mind out there, and there's going to be a spot for the Jets to play as an underdog. Maybe it'll be a home dog. Maybe it'll be getting a lot of points because this team is not as bad as the perception is. I mean, they lost C.J. Mosley on D and their first-round pick Quentin Williams. And this offense is going to be good or at least adequate with Sam Darnold. They got Le'Veon Bell, Jamison Crowder, Robbie
Herndon's coming back soon too. Their tight end,
right? This is an average NFL football team when they're healthy, in my opinion. So this isn't the spot, but I am kind of seeking out the right spot. Maybe Darnold after a couple games. Obviously when he comes back and looks good, the lines will go down. But the perception of the Jets right now is that they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, and it's a little unfair because they're just so banged up.
We have the Jags going to Carolina. Carolina is a 3.5-point favorite in this one. The over-under is 41. There were some word throughout the week that Minshew was a little bit banged up, but it seems like I think that was maybe just a little precautionary and that he's going to play. And man, we kind of went back and forth a little bit on Twitter, and you see a lot of quarterbacks and backups come into the league and that just can't hang, and they, quickly you can tell right away that they can't do it. I don't know how great this guy's going to be. I don't know if he's going to be, a starting franchise quarterback for some team, but he's at least a legitimate quarterback that can make things happen. I watched him play it when he was in the Pac-12 at Washington State. All the stories you hear about Minshew are hilarious. Leach calling him and saying, "You want to come lead the nation in passing?" Sure. And he goes on up and he's walking around with bottles of alcohol and fanny packs, and he's cutting off his own jean shorts. He's just a great character. He's a great story. And let's be honest, as soon as Foles went down, the Jags had the opportunity to be just a totally forgotten about, really boring, really bad football team. And between the Minshew mania and the Ramsey drama, they've at least been a team that you're paying attention to. And they're right in the mix in that division. That's just a wide open division. This game's weird to me because Carolina, I still think they're a little, I don't know what to think of them off that Houston game last week, because Houston just played so atrocious in that game. I felt like that was more of a Houston loss than a Carolina win. Their defense is good. I would probably lean low in this game from scoring, but I'm not sure if I lean aside in particular.
Yeah, this is a real hard game. Two teams that have had success with backups after starting the season with their starting quarterbacks unsuccessfully. And I know you as well as myself are on the Jacksonville over, I believe, for the year, right?
Yep.
And I wish we could have gotten that Texan game, that week 2 game, because they'd be sitting real pretty.
Yeah.
I don't like this game from a wagering perspective. I'll be rooting for my bet with Jacksonville. I have been impressed with Kyle Allen as well as Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew has made all the throws that you need to make as an NFL quarterback. And both guys, I hope, continue to play well. I actually thought 41 seemed a little low. I thought it was I don't know. There's a lot of playmakers on the field, and the quarterbacks are playing well. I mean, I know they're not household names. DJ Chark, Dede Westbrook, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel is going to catch a bomb one of these weeks. If you watch their games, he is very close. Him and Will Fuller for Houston. They're coming. I mean, you throw deep balls to these guys every week.
Them up. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So I don't really have opinion. If I had to play the game in any way, I'd probably go over 41, but it's a stay away for me.
And we have the Patriots playing at Washington. Washington, I think Coach Jay Gruden, they were asking him who was going to start at quarterback this week, and he said, I don't know. And he just, that's just he just doesn't, you could tell that he's just checked out right now. It won't be long before he is waxed. I think there's a Redskins-Dolphins game coming up. That is
next
week. Next week. That's going to be some appointment viewing. We also have a pretty good Cardinals-Bengals game later on where we're going to see some of the worst teams, at least so far in football, hooking up. I mean, do you have any side in this game? These large spreads on the road always scare me a little bit. I mean, a couple of these teams are really bad this year, and the Patriots are good, but offensively they haven't really been in a rhythm. They have, they're working out new kickers now, so that might be an issue. They haven't gotten the free points. They've missed some kicks and extra points. They're coming off a game that they really very well should have lost that game to Buffalo last week. I mean, Buffalo gave them so many chances to stay, and they over and over Josh Allen before he got hurt. Any thoughts on this big spread?
Believe it or not, I'm laying the points on the road in this one. I think the Redskins
they're so bad.
They're so bad they have no home field advantage, so I'm not worried about that. In fact, their fan base will work against them. So the fact that it's on the road is a non-factor to me. And the Patriots were so poor on offense last week. I'm sorry. Now, granted, the Bills are one of the best defenses in the league,
sure,
but they take these things personally. Brady, talked about how poor he was. I just see them coming out and jumping all over the Redskins, and I just don't know how the Redskins are going to score. If Dwayne Haskins plays, he's just not ready. He could be a great quarterback down the road. He's got a lot of the tools, but he is not mentally ready to play in this league. And of all people, Belichick's going to confuse them. I would rather see Haskins with laying the points. If Colt McCoy plays, I could see him grinding them and keeping them relatively in this or backdooring. And he's got a lot of heart, that guy. I have a lot of respect for him for what he is. But this looks like a 30-6, 27-3. I mean, this looks like a kind of game where I don't see the Redskins scoring, and I see Brady posting some decent numbers to kind of get back into form after one of his worst outings in some time against the Bills.
Yeah, I just don't. I agree. I can't envision the Patriots not coming out a little bit, you look at the chip on their shoulder because he looked bad. That was one of the worst games he's played in a while, Brady. And I think I posted a poll on Twitter between Washington and I guess let's take the Jets out of the equation because just like you mentioned and how I had put them in that grouping, we can't really judge them yet. It's kind of unfair to judge if they're even a bad team. I think they're going to be at least a slightly below average team. I don't think they're going to be like an all-time bad team like we've seen from Miami. I mean, the Bengals look really, really bad, and the Redskins. This team just looks horrible. I can't envision them getting 2 scores unless it's how the Jet and it's like. The only way is the way that the Jets covered where they were able to score defensively, and Washington's defense isn't even that great. I just don't – I think you're on the right side there. I just can't see –
It's not a normal play by me at all.
No, it's not. But you have to change the way you play. You have to change the way you play when in the age of scoring a little bit different and in the age of some of these teams that are legitimately trying to tank, especially this year with the Dolphins. It's hard. I mean, there's been a lot of sharp bettors that have just kind of been going back to the well and then said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do what's making me money right now. And that's, a lot of times playing the Patriots and against a team like the Redskins that they can just beat up on. 2 teams that I can't get a real feel for, the Falcons and the Texans. The Texans are a 5.5-point favorite at home. The Falcons just shoot themselves in the foot. You watch their games, and it's always I guess they didn't look, they're driving, they're moving the ball, and then it's a bad turnover, a couple penalties that sets them back. They're not a terrible team. I just never know what to think after I watch this Falcons game, and I'm bitter about the Texans because I played them last week, and I've very rarely been laying points this year. But I played the Texans at home, and it's you can't get the 20 at home against Carolina. That's all I need, 20. I'm not asking you to get
20 goddamn points.
Yeah, come on,
I'm with you with these 2 teams. I've been anti-Texan since last year when they went on that big win streak against bad opponents, and everybody was crowning them some wonderful team, and they got beat up by the Colts in the playoffs. And they're a different team this year. They've got a little bit of a different offensive line. I've got a ton of respect for Deshaun Watson, but I can't lay 5.5 with them. So it would either be automatically Falcon. They don't seem to cover big spreads at home. It would be Falcons or bust for me. I think this is a real turning point for this Falcons team. If they play another bad game like they did against the Titans last week, which was at home, which is surprising. I mean, they're 1-4. That might be the end of Dan Quinn.
I agree.
They might be rebuilding. So I kind of like that angle with teams, desperate teams, but the Texans coming off the home loss, it scares me that the Falcons just aren't that good. So it's a pass, but I lean dog. The
Good
thriller.
Game here. Good game here. Cardinals at the Bengals. This game is the Bengals -3. They kind of threw some people off their scent after week 1 because we saw them play Seattle tough at Seattle, and that was a game that the Bengals absolutely should have won, and their offense looked good. They moved the ball pretty well, and Ross had a couple of drops. They really should have taken that victory, and then they come back and they get their doors blown off by San Francisco, and then they're hanging there with Buffalo, and they come all the way back and they take the lead. They've been a tough team to get a gauge on. They get crushed against Pittsburgh, just like Jekyll and Hyde, but they're still, even their good efforts have not resulted in victories. This team is a 3-point favorite at home. They're playing another kind of a bad Cardinals team that's at least kind of young and fun, and maybe they can move the ball. But this is a stay away for me because I don't know if I can back either one of these teams right now.
Yeah, I can't. I struggle to back either team, but I do think the Bengals would be the play for me.
That would be my lean.
Coming off the embarrassing loss, Arizona's got to travel. We've seen a little bit out of the Bengals. You mentioned the Seattle game, and the second half of that Bills game, they came through for me as underdogs in that game.
Me too.
But their offensive line is so bad, but Arizona doesn't have a pass rush. So maybe, just maybe, this is a type of game where the Bengals can get the ball moving. I mean, Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, I was like, after the Seahawks game, this guy knows what he's doing. He's got this team playing different.
I thought the same thing. I was like, the offense, they're going to move the ball.
Yeah, the McVay prodigy, or disciple, I should say. But yeah, I mean, this is a game that's real tough to get excited about laying points with a team like the Bengals and Arizona. Kingsbury's underwhelmed me so far. I mean, I don't understand why every pass is, the average depth of target for Kyler Murray's passes. I mean, this is supposed to be the air raid, not the lateral raid, I mean, they're throwing screens and they're not really stretching the field at all. So this game, another game that I probably won't get to see too much of. I will be rooting for Tyler Boyd in a couple fantasy leagues, including your league. But other than that, yeah, pretty ick.
Yeah. And then there's, I think, a game or two that isn't really on the board right now because they don't know what's happening with Josh Allen yet in the Buffalo game at Tennessee. He's still in the concussion protocol, and it looks like it's like 50-50 if he's going to be able to be cleared this week. If not, it's going to be my guy, Matty Barkley. I got a little nervous because I needed the Bills last week too, and I'm like, oh, no, Matty Barkley's coming in. This is not the spot where I want to see my guy, Matt Barkley, against the Patriots when I need the Bills to cover here. But he at least was okay enough where he wasn't just a disaster to get that game to where the Patriots covered. So I actually, if Josh Allen was playing, I would have liked playing against the Tennessee spot because I just didn't think their win was quite as impressive as it looked when you really dig into it. It was one of those games where Tennessee does a good job of like taking advantage of other teams' mistakes, and they're always around, like that 8-8, 9-7, 7-9 type team because they're not flashy. I just don't think they're good. So I like to play them off of, against when they have their big wins. Because it seems like every year, they beat the Patriots, some years in prime time, or they'll have like these big wins and then they get a little bit overinflated the next week. But this game, I think we don't really know what to do with until we know if Josh Allen's playing. Because I wouldn't really want to play Matt Barkley against a pretty good defense.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a game where points are going to be extremely hard to come by unless they come via defensive turnovers or special teams plays. But the number I saw before the Allen injury was in like the mid-30s, so it's tough to get excited about playing that. And if you could figure out Marcus Mariota other than the fact that he's not that good, I mean, this guy pops up and plays good games when you least expect it. But this looks like the kind of game where Barkley's going to play. Everybody's going to think the Titans are going to win it because they're at home, and the Bills are going to have no offense with Barkley, and the Bills defense is going to find a way to win this game because I think the Titans defense is very good. I love their secondary, but I think the Bills defense is borderline elite. Yeah. They're well coached. Mariota to me against the good defense, pass. So this is a game where I lean Bills, and if it gets above a field goal, if they get a little overly excited about the Barkley factor, which I'm expecting, I think Barkley's going to play. That's just
I think
a
so
guess.
Too. It makes the most sense.
Yeah,
they're with the concussion stuff. Like if it's close, I don't think they're going to push it, especially with the young like franchise QB like that. So I don't think it makes sense to do. So I'm with you. If it got over a field goal, that's where I would play it. I think it would be because I think it's going to be close, and I feel like you get that extra hook that just feels like a little bit too much. In what I feel like that would almost be, that feels like a 2-score game when you get the 3 there, because it's probably going to be a lot of kicking going on. Couple more games to get through. We have the Bucks coming off a big win last week where they just offensively. Probably the best game of Jameis Winston's career, or at least on the very, very short list of them, because he's had a lot of bad games. The Bucks are a 3-point dog. They're going on the road to play the Saints and Teddy B, who are also coming off a nice primetime win. Wasn't necessarily a sexy win, but hey, a win nonetheless against a good Dallas team. What do you think in this game?
Yeah, I've been surprised with the way the numbers gone in this one with the Saints being at home. I think it opened at 4. It's down to 3.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a strong feel on either side. But what I don't see is as many points as you would expect when you think about these teams. You've got the Buccaneers, who are amazing against the run. They should be able to contain Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, and put the game on Teddy Bridgewater, who can complete kind of like Mason Rudolph for unders. He's a good under quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take a lot of chances downfield. He's going to throw the ball underneath. He's going to manage the game. It's going to keep the clock moving. And then the Bucs, they're not going to put up 50 again. I mean, that was a very unique game against the Rams. I'm a little worried that the Bucks will score enough, or that somehow this game, Winston is always a tricky quarterback to play unders with, because not only is he capable of making big plays down the field,
The
but
old
he's
pick
also
sixes.
capable. Yeah, the turnovers. But the Saints have been a real under team so far, Gino. I mean, they have 2 of 4 have gone under. But if you remember the Monday night game against the Texans, that was an under. There were 3 touchdowns, I think, in the last 2 minutes, or at least 17. I think it was 17 points. You had a touchdown, and then the late long field goal by Lutz. So that game, in my opinion, it went over, but you were fortunate if you had the over. And then the game against Seattle, in Seattle, they got a defensive score, and they got a special team score. And then the Saints got about 2 or 3 backdoor meaningless touchdowns under Russell Wilson to get that game well over the number. But that score is inflated. So I like Saints unders for the time being while Teddy's in the game, and these teams know each other well. Usually that can often lead. It's when they're meaningful games and the teams know each other well. I often lean under in that situation too. So I'll go lightly on under 46.
Okay, 3 games left to discuss. This one's going to be an angle that I've been playing so far this year, and it's 3-0 against the spread, and I'm going to play the Broncos on this spot because I've played teams against teams the week after they play Miami. So week 1, Baltimore beat up Miami. Week 2, the Cardinals covered the spread against Baltimore. In week 2, the Patriots beat up Miami. Next week, the Jets covered the spread against them, whether it was, defensive touchdowns, whatever, but they covered the spread against them. And then last week, week 3, the third week, it was Dallas that beat up Miami. And then if you played against Dallas last week, you played the Saints and you also covered the spread. So you're 3-0. My reasoning here is just when you watch teams play Miami, it's not a real football game. It's not. They get up so big early and they dominate that it's just like a false sense of what it takes to win a football game. You're not competitive throughout. And I think the next week, whether you're a step slow, whether you're a little off, whether you're not quite as, ready to go the full length of the game at 100%, maybe you took some plays off. I've just noticed that teams at the end of those Miami games, when I'm rewatching them, they look like, a JV or a Frosh soft game. Like the way the end of the game is, there's no buzz, there's no vibe. It doesn't even look like a professional game anymore. Right. And so I've noticed that the last few weeks. And this is another one where I think, you get the teams that come off the Miami games and everybody goes, oh, they looked so good last week. Well, yeah, they were beating up on Miami. So they're probably a half point to maybe even a point, sometimes a little overinflated. So the Chargers have a lot of injuries. They're going to try to get Gordon back into the mix. I think people assume right away he's just going to come in and be awesome, but he can't really be much better than Eckler, who has been very, very good. And Justin Jackson was running the ball very well too before he got hurt. He was a nice compliment. So sometimes it takes a little while. The Chargers are not a team that I like to play when they're favored by like more than a field goal. They're a team that they make a lot of mistakes. They've had their kicking issues this week. I think they're a good team. I think they'll still be a playoff team come the end of the year, but Denver's going to steal a game or they're going to keep a game close here. This is going to be one of my plays this week. I'm going to take the Broncos plus the 6.
Yeah, I'm on the Broncos as well this week. A lot of the reasons you said, not the Miami one. That's an interesting angle, though, and it has worked for you. But you mentioned the Chargers being banged up on both sides. They're now without Melvin Ingram. Their offensive line is a mess. They're without key pass catchers, even though they got Gordon back. Mike Williams has been banged up with a back injury. He might play. You got Benjamin out, Hunter Henry out. So they're a tough team to want to lay a lot of points with. They've always been like that. And this team just looks a little more like the 2016 and 2017 Chargers than last year's team that had kind of that killer instinct and put everything together. And the Broncos are desperate, and as bad as their 0-4 record is, they should have covered every game, right? I mean, they covered. They lost terrible to the Bears, but they covered. That was like a 1-point game. Last week, they was like a 1 or 2 point game. That game against Green Bay was one of my big bets of the year, and I lost that one. But I would bet Denver plus 8 against Green Bay and Lambeau every day and twice.
It was
on
deceiving
Sunday.
too. It was another deceiving game when you watched it. They're not as bad.
Right.
Like, I didn't even put them in the grouping of the really bad teams.
Because they're not.
They're
just not. But they're finding ways to lose, which
That's
is never good.
Yeah.
But getting 6 here, I think, is a fair number. It was 6.5, so maybe some sharp money coming in on the Broncos. I'm not necessarily sure they're going to win this game, and the Chargers probably find a way to win. But this is too many points. I'm going to go with the Broncos.
Yeah, this feels like a field goal game to me. So, yeah, let's go with the Broncos. We'll both be on the same side here, plus the 6. 2 games left. We have the game that, or I guess 3 games left. We have the game that everybody's looking at now as the big Sunday afternoon game. This is the reason why we don't have more games to watch, because we're going to get Packers at the Cowboys here. And I actually like this one also. The Cowboys are coming off a loss. Both these teams are coming off a loss. But I do think they got a little exposed. I think they're still a very good football team. But when we look at the Cowboys' schedule the first few weeks, it was a very easy schedule. And defensively, in a lot of like the defensive metrics and stuff I'm looking at, they really weren't that impressive. They didn't look as good as they should have for having beat up on some bad teams. And maybe a lot of that was some garbage time late, but it still didn't seem like it equated much. I think the Packers are in a nice spot here, plus 3.5. That's the key. I think you get the half there, and that's why I'd play the Packers here. I think this will just be a tight game back and forth. We saw the Packers offense get a little bit better last week. They have to get better after the initial script, though. They just so quick start and then so bad. And I don't think the Packers defense is nearly as bad as it looks last week. People really jumped on their defense because they had the real changing point in that game when the Packers played the Eagles. There were 3 consecutive drives that the Eagles got to start on short field, and 3 consecutive times they scored a touchdown. And that was the game. That was the difference in the game.
Well, it's no fun if we agree on everything, right?
Nice.
So
head to head, right? We're going
mano a mano. My best bet of the week is the Cowboys.
Beautiful.
And here we go. I mean, this is why you mentioned the Packers losing last week's game because of turnovers, but I could argue they'd be 1-3 or 0-4 if they didn't win the turnover margin significantly in their first 3 games. I don't believe in this team yet. I think they have a real good pass rush, and I think they have really good corners and secondary, but I think they can be run on, as the Eagles showed by 176 yards on the ground for a team that had struggled to get the running game going. And now they got to take on the Cowboys at home and Ezekiel Elliott, who really hasn't gotten off to this good a start. Maybe it had something to do with the holdout. But this is a great spot for him. And then you have the Packers. I mean, Devontae Adams is probably not going to play in this game with a turf toe, and Jamal Williams is out. How are they going to move the ball? I mean, I know Aaron Rodgers will make a few plays, but this team has struggled to score after the first few possessions.
Allison, I know. We're getting a lot of Geronimo Allison this week.
Well, so I don't really see these teams as equals, and that's what the 3.5 tells me, that the perception is that these teams are basically equal. I don't think the Packers are a playoff team, and I think the Cowboys are a major contender in the NFC. So I love this spot for the Cowboys to bounce back and handle the Packers by at least a touchdown. But we shall see. It should be interesting. It's never fun playing against Aaron Rodgers, but maybe, just maybe, Aaron Rodgers is on the tail end of his career at this point.
I think this is going to be a close game. I hope it goes back and forth. I hope we get a good effort from both Aaron Rodgers and from Dak. And we'll have to make like a beer wager or on this game between you and I. I think 2 more to hit, the Sunday night and Monday night. Colts at Chiefs. This is a spot where I would really like to try to play the Colts, but I'm scared off by their injuries that you mentioned a little earlier. We were talking about another game. Their defense, like right up the middle in particular, is really banged up. And I mean, the Chiefs could really exploit them and it might be able to just score a lot of points on this Colts team. But I like the spot because the Colts might have been looking ahead last week. They had the Raiders coming home. That they maybe were looking at a big game on the road, going to play the Chiefs, thought that they could just kind of walk over the Raiders. They got down early. I've kind of been pretty impressed with Brissett, too. He's good on third down. He doesn't really make a lot of mistakes, except for the big one that he made last week at the end of the game. But
first interception of the year.
But he's actually been like a really solid and serviceable quarterback, but Mac is a little banged up too. So I really like the spot for the Colts, and I want to play them, but I'm going to have to wait, I guess, till right before and see what their injuries and what their depth is going to look like.
Yeah, this looks like a game where the Chiefs should score a lot of points. It does sound like Darius Leonard is going to be back, which is, if he doesn't play, their defense is a totally different situation. He is an unbelievable leader and an unbelievable player. Malik Hooker will still be out. It sounds like T.Y. Hilton is likely to miss this game. which is definitely hurts, but I think they can survive offensively. If this is a rematch of that divisional game last year in the playoffs where the Chiefs dominated Andrew Luck and the Colts, who never got the offense going, and the Chiefs defense looked better than they did in almost any other game last year. I can't lay 11 in this spot. I think the back door at least will be open all game long against a poor defense. So this is Colts or pass for me. And at this point, it's pass until I get a little more information on the injury situation.
And then the Monday night game.
A good one, finally.
And this one's kind of fun because you have two teams that like just a week ago everybody jumped off the Browns bandwagon, and then they played, you see games sometimes and we see the score at the end of the game and people, I think, overreacted what happened. But Cleveland actually played very, very well last week. And I think when you continue to look at their games before last week, we start to see that their defense is actually really good, even with a lot of the injuries and with a lot of the pieces that they're missing. They have a really solid defense. They still their coaching, their discipline. Baker's been shaky. Offensively, we don't know if Landry's going to be around, so they're no finished product by any means. But they're going to be playing a San Francisco team that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It feels like we haven't seen San Francisco in a year, even though they, just because they're coming off their bye week. But they're 3-0, and I don't have any idea what to think of this Frisco team with who they've played and with how they've played, with how well that they've played, and the fact they were able to win that Pittsburgh game with all those turnovers was incredible. Any thoughts on the Monday night game?
Yeah, this is a Kyle Shanahan with an extra week to prepare versus Freddie Kitchens handicap. I thought the Browns played pretty well last week, but I thought it was as much or more the Ravens playing terribly. I think the Niners defense is underrated. I think Kyle Shanahan will give them all they can handle, and I'm expecting them to clean things up. They might be 3-0, but there's no way they went into that bye week thinking that, feeling too good about themselves after that 5-turnover effort against Pittsburgh. So I'm thinking this is a Jimmy G good game. Now, you mentioned the Brown defense. I do think that they are the strength, and they don't get a lot of credit. They've got a lot of talent. It remains to be seen if they'll get their secondary back to healthy for the Browns. If they don't, I think they really might take advantage of this. And don't forget about George Kittle, who is going to get things going here soon enough. So, man, this is the first week I've been on more than one favorite, and I kind of feel like the underdog teams were undervalued and maybe others were overvalued. I feel like this is the week where some of these favorites come back in after a tough couple weeks, especially last week for favorite bettors. So, I mean, I like the Niners, the Cowboys, and the Patriots as favorites, which is a lot for me. But I'm on the Niners in this one, and it's the first Monday night game I'll be playing all year.
So this would be one that I'm also going to kind of wait to see what the injuries are like. If I had a lean, I would slightly lean towards Cleveland just because I think it's going to be a close game, and I think if you can get like 3.5 or 4, I'd take it. At 3 or at 2.5, I wouldn't. I just think it's going to be a good game. I think both of these teams are actually solid teams. I don't know. I don't know if either of these teams are going to be 10-win teams, but I don't think either one of these teams is going to be like a 5 or 6. I think they're both, like going to be in the mix, battling for a playoff spot. Whether or not they're awesome, especially because when we look at the division now for Cleveland, we don't know what we're going to get from Pittsburgh with Mason Rudolph. I think, as you mentioned, Baltimore, they're okay. They can score. Their defense is atrocious. They have to make some adjustments there, and the Bengals are awful. So the Browns are going to be. They have to at least just kind of stay around 500 over the next couple weeks because they have a couple tough games coming up, and then they have a real cake schedule towards the end of the year. So it would just be hilarious to see the Browns and like Freddie Kitchens in the playoffs and Baker, and they just have a lot of characters. They would be a lot of fun to see in there, whether you're going to play them or play against them. So Scotty Shap, I appreciate it, buddy. We were able to talk a little baseball, college football, and then hit on every one of the NFL games. Give everyone out there some info on where we can find you and what you're going to be working on next.
Yeah, you can find me at Scott Shap 34 on Twitter. And in terms of working, you can find my NFL Thursday night analysis, and I do a 6-pack on Bet America. That's on extra.betamerica.com. A lot of other good content on there. Also doing some Keeneland work on twinspires.com, the blog on there. I'll be doing a couple articles, just put out how to bet the Shadwell Turf Mile, as well as how to bet the Phoenix tomorrow. Looking forward to heading up there tomorrow for opening day. Then I'll be back on the Churchill Downs simulcast feed in the month of November, along with Joe Christofek, Ed DeRosa, James Scully, and Brandon Staubel. Lot going on, but then the podcast that we'll be having you on here before long again. You've been on a couple times already, but not an NFL one. We'll do, and that's the Who Do You Like podcast, and you could find that Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all those places.
It is part of my weekly listening. I always like to check in and kind of get some of your thoughts and whoever your guest thoughts are before I kind of formulate, because that's what there's a lot of sharp podcast shows, information out there nowadays more than ever, especially with gambling becoming more prevalent. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, but there's really a lot of good out there. So I always try to listen to as much as I can, read as much stuff as I can before I kind of formulate my opinion. And you do a great job each and every week, buddy. Thanks for giving me another just about an hour of your time here, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks for having me. It was a good time, Gino, as always, bud.
Okay, buddy. Have a nice one. Scott Shapiro here on That's What G Said. Don't go anywhere, folks. We will be right back.
Big thanks to Scott Shapiro, our good buddy, for the help with the NFL Week 5 preview. Let's recap one more time Scott's picks. He likes the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Patriots this week. So Scott and I, we're going to go head up against each other in two different spots. So now I'll give you the picks recap for me. 17-10 so far on the week against the spread. That is including the Rams' loss. Unfortunately, that wasn't an against the spread loss. That was just a straight up loss, but we're 17-10 nonetheless, and I will have 5 plays for you this week. Buffalo plus the 3. We still don't know if it's going to be Josh Allen or Matt Barkley. You know what? I don't really mind. This is more of a play against Tennessee. It's a good stat from RJ White. Tennessee is 11-17-2 against the spread when favored recently, and then after a win, they are 10-20-1. This is a team that is not consistent. They play a really good week, and then they bounce back the next week, and they just look flat. And I think Buffalo's defense is really, really good. I think Tennessee's going to have a hard time scoring on them, enough so that Matt Barkley and Buffalo can keep it close, even if it isn't Josh Allen. Denver, you can find +6, +6.5. Obviously, I like the Denver side, so look for that +6.5. I've been playing teams the week after they play Miami. This has worked for me so far 3 times this year. In week 1, Baltimore played Miami. So then I played against Baltimore in week 2 when they played Arizona, and Arizona covered the spread. Next week, New England played Miami. New England played the Jets the week after. The Jets covered the spread. The next week, the Dolphins played Miami. The Dolphins played the Saints the week after. The Saints covered the spread. So far, teams are 0-3 against the spread after the week after they play Miami. I'm going to do the same thing with the Chargers here. And we'll play Denver, who is a lot better than the 0-4 record would suggest. We'll play the Denver Broncos because the Chargers might be just a little overvalued with Gordon coming back into the fray and coming off that Dolphins win. So Denver plus the 6.5. Green Bay, this was one of the games that Scott and I are going to make a little beer bet on. Straight up in here, I like Green Bay. I think these two teams are pretty evenly matched. Green Bay and Dallas. I think Green Bay's defense is very, very good, and people kind of jumped off them after that Thursday night game last week where they lost to Philly. I think this game should be more like 2.5, 3, so I feel like we're getting an extra half a point here. Let's take Green Bay plus the 3.5 at Dallas. Jacksonville. I'm going to end up going with this game because I'm seeing some 3.5s up there. So same type of thing. Jacksonville, Minshew at Carolina plus the 3.5. To me, this feels like it should be 3. If you're getting an extra half, take it. Make sure you get the 3.5 though with Jacksonville. And then close things out Monday night with Cleveland. So we'll have 2 games straight head up with Scott Shapiro. I'm going to go with the Browns on Monday night. They're +4 I'm seeing in some spots. So Browns plus the 4. You know what? I think these two teams are both solid teams. I think Cleveland's defense is very good. We'll see what happens with Landry. Cleveland at San Fran plus the 4. 5 plays for me this week. Buffalo, Denver, Green Bay, Cleveland, Jacksonville. Buffalo plus 3, Denver plus 6.5, Green Bay plus 3.5, Cleveland plus 4, Jacksonville plus 3.5. Those are my 5 plays trying to improve on the 17-10 record. Let's get into your horse racing for Saturday. Just a couple plays for you. Big weekend stakes races at Keeneland, stakes races at Santa Anita, stakes races at Belmont. Before we get into the horse racing, stop what you're doing right now. Head on over to cindycarava.com. That is full service realtor Cindy Carava there. So it's cindycarava.com. You can find out all of her information. She can help you out with anything you need in the industry of real estate. She can help you out with buying, selling, leasing, improving your home. If you're just curious on finding out how much your home is worth, she can help you with that. We're going to start talking horse racing. The name sounds familiar. Cindy Carava. She is the wife of horse racing trainer Jack Carava, who's been a mainstay here on the Southern California racing circuit for the last 30 years. I trust her with my life. I know her personally. She's one of the most kind and genuine people you will ever meet. Check it out right now, cindycarava.com. in the San Gabriel Valley, North San Diego County. But if you have any questions, even if you're not in the area, she'll help you out. Send her an email, cindyc.realtor@gmail.com. Just a race to talk about it. I don't really like any of the... I couldn't find anything to bet at Santa Anita that I loved. But we will have a fun race to watch where we're going to see in the 9th race at Santa Anita, Omaha Beach making his return to the races. Remember Omaha Beach, who won the Arkansas Derby for Richard Mandela? He would have been the Kentucky Derby favorite, but he had to scratch prior to that, and he's had some issues. There were 2 or 3 times where it looked like he was going to be able to make his return to the races and had a little bit of a setback, got a little sick. Now he's going to be making his return in a sprint. He's actually never been this short in his entire career. The shortest race he's been at was 7 furlongs when he broke his maiden. And he's going to have to deal with Chancelot for Navarro. Remember Chancelot with that 121 buyer on July the 28th? Chancelot really, really quick. Probably a lot quicker than Flagstaff in here. He will be real tough to catch. Had to deal with a bad rail, the inside, in the Jerkins at Saratoga on August the 24th. Now gets the cut back from 7 furlongs to 6 furlongs. This guy can fly, and give him a major bounce back possibility, because Chancelot will be very, very live in the Breeders' Cup Sprint if he runs well here. I like what Navarro did. Send him over to Santa Anita, get a prep race under his belt early on. Not a race to bet, but just a race to watch. We'll see how Omaha Beach comes back. We'll see how Chancelot races over the track there at Santa Anita, trying to get his nice prep race for the Breeders' Cup. Let's go to Belmont Park, race number 8. I'm going to talk 2 races for you at Belmont where I have a couple plays. And this will be Belmont Park, October 5th. So this is Friday, race number 8. We're talking about the Hill Prince, 1 1/8 on the turf course. Let's go to the 7, Standard Deviation. I've liked this horse for quite some time. He was a first out winner last year at Saratoga, and then he went right into the Breeders' Futurity this weekend a year ago, and he was a pretty good third. Then he was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, kept an eye on him at the beginning of 2019. He took a while to get back to the races, and I think now he's really starting to kind of get into his best. Standard Deviation, 3-year-old, grass winner in 2 of his last 3 starts, stakes races. They're short, small stakes races. Nonetheless, he got the job done. I think Standard Deviation coming into his own right now in a race where, I mean, who scares you? There's no real monster in this Hill Prince. Let's go to Standard Deviation. If we can get 7-2 on Standard Deviation, we'll make a win wager in race number 8. Race number 9 at Belmont is the Turf Classic. Not a real strong opinion for me. I think any of those can win, but we will go on to race number 10, which is the Champagne, and I'll mention 2 horses in here. I'll take a little shot against Green Light Go, who's very impressive in his 2 wins. But the 2 horses I'm going to use in here, I guess 3. I wouldn't talk you off Tiz the Law to the outside, who was pretty impressive winning. But I actually like 3 Technique and Gozilla a little bit. So if you're playing late exotics, or I'll take a shot against Green Light Go. Gozilla might be the quickest in here. With the race on the slop last time out, I think we have an opportunity to give him a legitimate excuse. And he might be overlaid in a higher price than he should be, just because people see that effort, think it was a little disappointing, and they want to go elsewhere. Don't get rid of Gozilla yet. He's got a shot in here. I do think the horse I'll play to win if he's around 7-2 is 3 Technique. 3 Technique was behind your next out grade 1 winner Basin, who defeated Godzilla in the Hopeful. 3 Technique was not far behind Basin that day on July the 21st. He was inside, and by the time he was able to actually get some room and start running, it was too late for 3 Technique because Basin had already opened up a few lengths and snuck away. Then after, he comes right back and wins at 7 furlongs. Looks like a horse visually who can run all day long. That is the number 4, 3 Technique. We'll hook up the 4 with the 5 Godzilla. Those will be the 2 horses we use in race number 10 at Belmont Park. Over at Keeneland. Get your past performances out for Keeneland. Love the Keeneland races. But I will say this. The takeout issue the last couple of years was a frustrating one where they've gone up and down and up and down. So, a lot of us as horse players years ago, we wouldn't even discuss takeout really. It wasn't something that was talked about. We didn't really know about it very much. It wasn't prevalent, and we hear about it a lot more. When there are a lot of options to wager, horse racing, right? Sports, daily fantasy, make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. Make sure you're getting the best return on your investment. If you're wagering on something that's just taking extra percentages of your money, why? It's different. It's not the only thing you have to wager on anymore. Don't let people do that to you. Whether it's a track that you love, races that you love, don't let somebody take extra dollars out of your pocket. So try to find out what those takeout rates are at all the tracks. And, most tracks, it's just the low takeout pick 5. That's the best wager. It's the hardest wager to hit. But if you put the most of your bankroll into the low takeout wagers, and you focus in on those, your bankroll is going to be bigger when you win. Keeneland. 2 plays. The 8th race is the First Lady. And I'm going to mention 2 horses in here. Obviously, the favorite's Rushing Fall, who will take a lot of money. But we'll go against Rushing Fall in here with 2. The number 4, Uni, who just missed second, was rolling up the inside and had to alter and angle around, and then in between had to slow down her stride a little bit, and that might have cost her. And then Juliet Foxtrot, who sat second, off of a long shot, moved to the lead, opened up a few lengths, just got nailed by Basilica last time out. That was going a mile and an eighth. Now you get the cut back to a mile for a filly who has a nice tactical style, who should be right up sitting off the pace. Let's take a swing against Rushing Fall. If you play the late exotics, let's use the 3 Juliet Foxtrot and the 4 Uni in race number 8. Now in race number 9, I'm not going to tell you if you're playing like a late pick 4 or late pick 5, I won't tell you to play against Governor Morris. I thought he was impressive. But it all depends on how you're approaching the wager, right? And how you approach the sequence. From a specific race to race, I'm going to put Governor Morris in the second spot. I like the 2 Cassie horses in here a lot. Tap It to Win. Broke well, was in a tight spot at the rail, took back a bit, waited, got a nice opening inside, moved through, drew off. Beat a nice next out winner who came over to win at Churchill Downs. I like what I saw from Tap It to Win from the rail. And then Enforceable. Enforcible's dam, Just Whistle Dixie, is a multiple graded stakes winner in grade 1 placed. She's dropped 6 foals to race. All of them are winners, including New Year's Day, grade 1 winner, 1.1 million. That's a half brother to Enforceable. And then Enforceable is a full brother to Mohayman. Remember Mohayman, 5 for 13. He won his first 5 starts, 4 graded stakes races. He won 3 times at the age of 2, including 2 graded stakes races. And then Enforceable is also a full brother to Kingly, who is 3 for 9, who's earned $247,000 and a grade 3 winner. So this is a very well-bred 2-year-old who took a nice step forward when he went long for the first time on the main track. I like Enforceable to hit the board in here and to spice things up. So maybe we play Tap It to Win, Enforceable, and Governor Morris as our exotics, and we try to just get Enforceable into the exactas, into the tries there. And if you play any late exotics, make sure to include the 1 Tap It to Win and the 5 Enforceable. That's going to do it for this episode of That's What G Said. Make sure to get to YouTube, subscribe. You will get every episode of That's What G Said podcast, and we're getting closer and closer to the Breeders' Cup. Folks, come Breeders' Cup time, we're going to have a full deep dive on the Breeders' Cup where we go through every single horse in every single race on both the Friday and the Saturday cards. You'll want to subscribe right now, YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud. That way, when we record that episode, you won't miss it. Have a great one, folks. We'll be talking to you soon. Thanks for listening to That's What G Said.